In today's author presentation, we have Laura Ingalls Wilder, presented by Hannah Geringer. Laura Ingalls Wilder was born February 7, 1867, in Lake Pepin, Wisconsin. But the family didn't stay there. They moved a lot from one part of the American frontier to another by covered wagon. They moved to Minnesota, to Iowa, to Missouri, to Kansas, to the Indian Territory, and the Dakota Territory. Laura started teaching at 16, the year of 1883 to 1885. And guess what? She never graduated high school. Her school that she was attending, it was a rural one-room school, and it only went to the year of 9th grade. And she was the only one smart enough in her class that was going to be able to pass the final exam. And so her teacher decided to postpone the exam to the next year. But Laura had different plans. She was engaged to Almanzo Wilder, and they were married on August 25th, 1885. And she died on February 10th, 1957, in Mansfield, Missouri. After they were married, just 1 year later, they had their first daughter. Her name was Rose. She was born in 1886. Their first 4 years of marriage was very hard. They had a lot of problems. They had a lot of difficulty. A lot of their crops were failures because of weather. And then they contracted diphtheria, which is a really bad disease. And it left her husband partially paralyzed and had other health problems because of that disease for the rest of his life. And then they lost their 2-week-old son. And then after they lost their baby, less than 2 weeks later, their house burnt down. They had a very hard year. And so they picked up and they moved. And they went to Florida. And then they came back to Missouri. And she became a dressmaker. And then after she became a dressmaker, she started writing for the Missouri Ruralist. She started writing about her farm life. And that was the first thing she ever did for her writing career. That was in year 1911. And then in 1929, the stock market crashed. And Almanzo and Laura lost most of their savings. And so during this time, Laura wrote her first autobiography. So that's her story, remember? A nonfiction book. But it was never published. The publishers suggested that she write her story as a fiction book. And that's exactly what Laura Ingalls Wilder did. With inspiration from her daughter Rose, she wrote her phenomenal book series called The Little House Books. Laura Ingalls Wilder published her first book in her 9-book series when she was 65 years old in the year of 1932. Her book titles are called Little House in the Big Woods, Farmer Boy, Little House on the Prairie, On the Banks of Plum Creek, By the Shores of Silver Lake, The Long Winter, Little Town on the Prairie, These Happy Golden Years, and The First 4 Years. So now we're going to take a look at 3 of the books written by Laura Ingalls Wilder. Let's look at the first book that she ever wrote. Remember, she was 65 years old. And this book is called Little House in the Big Woods. And remember, these are historical fiction books, which means that they are fiction, but they have a little bit of history in them. This book follows the family in the life on the prairie throughout the 4 seasons. The first book, entitled Little House in the Big Woods, covers the year of 1871 through the eyes of 5-year-old Laura Ingalls, the oldest sister in the family. Laura, Mary, and baby Carrie live with Ma and Pa in a log cabin in a large Wisconsin woods, not too far from Pa's parents' house. The book goes by season. In autumn, the family stores food for the winter. Once the family is ready with enough food, their busy lives can relax a little bit, and autumn turns into winter. During these cold months, the family have various chores to do at night. And at night, they all listen to Pa play his fiddle after their chores are done. The story continues showing other parts of life on the prairie, how bears and wolves also live in the woods. The family has a big fear of these animals, but a love for the meat because it lasts a really long time. As winter slowly thaws into spring, the family's everyday routine changes into making maple sugar and even dancing at their grandparents' house. As they move into the summer months, Ma gardens and Pa hunts and does work in the field. The girls watch or help with other chores like making straw hats or large rounds of cheese. All summer, the family works to prepare food for the winter, but friends can visit now, unlike they couldn't in the winter. The family visits the houses of friends and relatives. During this year, Laura learns about life from her parents and how to survive in the big woods, and that she and Mary are unique and loved fully by both of their parents. Okay, now we're going to move to our second summary, but this is called By the Shore of Silver Lake, and it's the 5th book in Laura Ingalls Wilder's series, the middle one. It covers 1 year of Laura's life, 1879, and she was 12 years old. This book follows the family through seasons like it did in the other one, but they moved 3 different times, and then the Ingals finally found their forever homestead. By the Shores of Silver Lake, the 5th book, begins in the year of 1879. Laura is 12. The family is getting ready to move away from Plum Creek. They had all recovered from scarlet fever, but Mary became blind because of the illness, and Laura was tasked to be Mary's eyes. This made her grow more mature and kind. The family moves from Plum Creek out west because Pa got a job at the Dakota Territory in their railroad camp as the paymaker, bookkeeper, and timekeeper. Pa's sister and her family also live at the railroad camp. So Laura meets her cousin Lena, and they form a friendship of playing together, having chores together, and riding Lena's pony. When winter approaches, the other railroad workers and their families move back east. But the Ingals family is fortunate to be asked to move to the new territory and live in the surveyor's house on the shores of Silver Lake. This winter was warm and lovely. The family made special Christmas gifts for each other, and they welcomed even an unexpected guest for Christmas. And Laura's family dog had died earlier on, and so Pa had to reassure her that Jack had gone to dog heaven and was very happy. After winter, the family moves into a little shanty on the claim. But this new claim was not going to remain shanty because they get to make a new home in their forever homestead. They begin building this new home in the town of DeSemmet, and the Ingals covered wagon travels are finally over. Okay, we're on to summary number 3. These Happy Golden Years, published in 1943. It's the 7th of the 9-book series by Laura Ingalls Wilder, and it covered 2 years of Laura's life, 1882 to 1884, in between her age of 15 and 17. This book follows Laura in her new teaching jobs and her relationship. The 7th book is based on Laura's later adolescence, covering her short time as a teacher and the relationship from friend to courting, which is kind of like dating, to Almanzo Wilder. This book is set from 1882 to 1884. Laura's years from 15 to 17. The story begins with Pa taking Laura in the winter to her first teaching assignment. She was 15, and this was the first time she ever left home. But Laura was determined to work so that she could help pay for Mary's tuition at the Iowa College for the Blind. She moved in with her school board and his unhappy wife and began to hate living there. So Almanzo picked her up every weekend, driving 24 miles to give her a break. Laura finished 3 teaching assignments in a 1-room school. She even had some students that were older than she was. But by the time that Mary had graduated, She even had some leftover money that she got to give to her parents to help them on their homestead. Well, Laura and Almanzo's relationship grew into an engagement proposal, but her love was tested when he had to move back home to see his family. Laura found that she could not live without him, and the book finishes with a quiet, small ceremony and a tearful goodbye to her family before leaving to live in the home that Almanzo had built for them. Laura Ingalls Wilder is a pretty interesting lady. One of the things that I find really neat is that her first book, remember the autobiography that the people said was boring? It actually got published 84 years after she wrote it in 2014. Also, Laura was distantly related to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, but guess what? She did not like him and what he stood for. The series has been created into many television shows, radio plays, and inspired many spin-off books. Another thing I find so cool is that the Little House series has sold over 60 million copies in 26 different languages. And the Little House fortune is estimated to be worth $100 million. And all of that money has been left to Rose, remember her daughter? Her lawyer's daughter is who is getting all of that money. Crazy, right? Not only is Laura Ingalls Wilder interesting, she's also won some awards. She won the Children's Literature Legacy Award and 3 John Newbery Medals. Thank you for watching this author presentation of Laura Ingalls Wilder. If you would like to know more information, there's a Laura Ingalls Wilder website and many books that you can find even more about her. And if you want to go a step further, you can even visit the Laura Ingalls Wilder Museum in West Pepin, Wisconsin, where she was born. How exciting is that? Thank you.